Hi there, I'm Cora, a student at the Miami Valley School in Dayton, Ohio. This year, I'm taking an APUSH history class with my teacher, Mr. Squires, in which we attempt to make cool educational videos to supplement our learning. As the basis of our class, we've been using the textbook The American Pageant, written by David M. Kennedy and Lizabeth Cohen. Recently, we've been studying the 31st chapter titled American Life in the Roaring Twenties, which covers the time period 1919 to 1929. In this chapter, Kennedy and Cohen describe the fundamental transformation America experienced after World War I. While the Roaring Twenties brought newfound prosperity to the nation, many Americans during this decade feared the loss of their traditional ways. After the war, isolationist America demonstrated an inward-looking mentality when Congress passed the Emergency Quota Act of 1921, which set quotas to restrict the influx of European newcomers. Soon after, Congress reduced these quotas and banned the immigration of all Japanese immigrants in the Immigration Act of 1924, an effort to freeze America's existing racial composition. This marked the end of an era of what Kennedy and Cohen call virtually unrestrained immigration. Significant anti-foreign anxiety was also cultivated during the Red Scare, in which American fear of communism ran rampant when communists gained power in the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. This event resulted in an American crusade against left-wingers, whose patriotism was deemed suspect. Fears of so-called un-American values were also demonstrated by the Ku Klux Klan, an organization which Kennedy and Cohen call an extremist, ultra-conservative uprising against many of the forces of diversity and modernity that were transforming American culture. The KKK discriminated against a whole slew of people. The organization was anti-foreign, anti-Catholic, anti-internationalist, anti-evolutionist, anti-bootlegger, anti-gambling, anti-birth control, anti-black, anti-Jewish, anti-pacifist, anti-communist. They were pretty much against everyone except white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, whom they claimed were the only 100% Americans. The American Pageant deems the KKK a manifestation of the intolerance and prejudice plaguing people anxious about the dizzying pace of social change in the 1920s. Such social change was indeed significant. One manifestation of change, albeit temporary, was the prohibition of alcohol, taking shape in 1919 in the 18th Amendment. While popular in the South and the West, the 18th Amendment was in some ways doomed to fail from the very beginning. Not only did prohibitionists overlook the American tradition of weak government control over personal lives, but they also ignored the reality that it is impossible to make illegal something that millions of people never regarded as a crime. Another manifestation of change was due to American economic prosperity in the Roaring Twenties. Following the recession of 1920 to 1921, the American economy underwent a 7-year sprint. New techniques such as the assembly line production termed Fordism, after its pioneer Henry Ford, launched an age of increased efficiency. Technological advances spurred a new consumer economy, contributed to an increased standard of living, and led to the development of even more industries. The newly blossoming automobile industry, for example, pushed forth supporting industries, such as rubber, glass, fabrics, highway construction, and petroleum. Another major industry took shape as a new air age was brought on by the Wright brothers following their historic flight in 1903. The implications of flight were enormous. Besides providing prosperity to America in the shape of a new industry, it also provided safer travel, cultivated a new form of warfare, and rendered American isolation a quote bygone dream unquote, as it helped close the gap of the oceans to its east and west. Radio and movies also underwent significant advances in the 20s as improvements made long-distance radio broadcasting possible and as the first talkie or movie with speaking characters hit the national stage. Another significant change in America during the 1920s came when a new generation of writers and artists joined the new movement of modernism. Americans were greatly influenced by artists like Pablo Picasso and Marcel Duchamp, modernists who questioned social conventions and traditional authorities. In literature, the modernist movement was represented by the breakdown of traditional literary forms, as writers experimented with new techniques, like multiple perspectives and stream of consciousness. American architects cultivated the unorthodox theory that buildings should grow organically from their sites, rather than relying on imitation of European styles. All of this is part of what Kennedy and Cohen call a cultural liberation, as modernists bestowed on American culture a new vitality, imaginativeness, and artistic daring. In this way, modernists represented the Roaring Twenties as traditions were challenged, advancements abounded, and America witnessed a transformation from which it could never turn back. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to be awesome.